So welcome everyone to today's social system mapping OnRamp session, 12th, 2024. Your hosts today, as usual, are me, Christine Capra, co-founder of SumMap and Greater Than the Sum, and Kara Martner, our producer and tech support person. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to do some introduce ourselves in the chat in a moment. I'm going to spend just a very brief few minutes introducing what social system mapping is. And then we're going to, Ben Roberts is going to share a social system map variation that he's been working on, and which will be really fun and interesting for all of us. And then he'll present the map for a while. Well, then we'll stop for some questions and answers. And for those of you who are interested in sticking around or who are new, we have what we do is we have a formal session for an hour, and then everyone who needs to jump off at the top of the hour jumps off, and then I stick around, and I'm not sure if Ben will, but others will stick around for an extra half hour for just more questions and answers, or just to get to know each other, or whatever informal stuff is wanting to happen for that. So that's our agenda. And it looks like, yeah, Ben is saying in the chat that he's not going to stick around for the extra half hour, which is just fine. We appreciate him showing up and doing this. And I'm just opening the chat so that I'm reading it. Okay. So let's go ahead and start with, and we have some new faces today, so this is really fun. It's always wonderful to see new people, and especially when we have a few of them, it's exciting. And so I invite you to in the chat add your, and people are still coming in, so I'm noticing, I'm hearing pinging and more entries. So but let's go ahead and have you in the chat add your name, pronoun, and location. And then once you've got that done, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. Hi, Denise. Welcome. Glad you're here.
Hi.
Hi. And
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Welcome. And I see there's an April with us. Just want to, if you are interested in unmuting and doing a mic check, feel free. But there's no pressure to do that, and there's no pressure to turn on your video if you don't want to. And then the invitation is also to add name, pronoun, location to the chat. Hi, April. Nice to see you. And then, assuming you're able and willing, share with us what's a primary network that you are part of or working with or thinking about relative to social system mapping, because you usually aren't thinking about social system mapping if you're not also thinking about a network of some sort. We have a range of issues and kinds of systems change and identity systems and equity type change. All really important things that everyone is working on. And so I just want to say how happy it always makes me when we do this and I see all the different things that people are working on and the super important work that everyone's doing in the world. And I feel honored to get to support it in some small way. And then if you could just share what brings you here today. Here for Ben. Yay, Ben from Cindy. It's nice when we're here for relational reasons as well as learning reasons. I appreciate that. New map. Yep. And Anna can totally understand that it feels abstract. This is one of the reasons we do these on-ramps, is so that you can have some exposure to an actual map and see sort of how it all fits together. And because it does take some repetition and some tangible seeing of maps and the process to really for it to sink in. And so I'm going to go ahead and just do a real brief introduction to what is social system mapping. And this will reiterate how abstract it is, but how broad it is, but also hopefully we'll get a sense of the applicability of it. So social system mapping is essentially, it's a synthesis of a social network map. So you've seen social network analysis maps where people are connected to people and you see the relationships among people, and it layers in dimensions that you would see in an asset map and or a concept map or a system map or a stakeholder map. So it's sort of a synthesis of all of these, with the foundation being the social network map. It's online, it's interactive and accessible. And it's really more of a process. Even just starting a social system map is a kind of beginning to just thinking about it is beginning to shift how we are thinking about our networks and the systems that we're trying to change. So the outcome of a map is as much about the process and what we experience and learn during the process as it is about a final map that is never really final because it keeps emerging. So again, it's iterative, it's emergent, it's dynamic, and it's an ongoing collective practice. It's, as I said, it's a process more than a product. And why are we doing it? A social system map is meant to support systemic transformation, supporting a global movement to shift from systems of dominance, exploitation, and extraction, all of this work that you are all already doing in some way or another, to systems of connection, reverence, and regeneration. And what we've learned over the last, say, 20 or so years, since network mapping and systems thinking have come together to be a thing, is that this shift that we're talking about, however we're framing it in our own context, requires, so what's required for supporting systemic transformation is strong networks of people connecting across differences that make a difference, and building trust and belonging and strong relationships of wise change agents. So it's not just about strong relationships, it's also about understanding systems change, understanding what keeps systems the way they are and how to move them into a different kind of a way of being. So it takes both. And a social system mapping, and so I haven't done this little piece of presentation for a while, so I'm kind of discovering it as I go forward and going, oh, what's that? Oh, so the technology for social system mapping is that there's a tool for data gathering called SumMap, which is what I and my partner have developed and continue to build upon and enhance, that is meant to gather data for this specific purpose of building a social system map. So it's a very specialized, very sort of fine-tuned data gather, a survey tool, essentially, where you gather, so we set up SumMap to gather the data, define the kind of data that we want to have in our map. And then we the data goes through a live link into Kumu, which is a data visualization tool. So what Ben is going to show us today is the data living in Kumu. So what you're interacting with in Kumu is the visualization, but the data is gathered in some app, and then Kumu, we embed the Kumu interface back. Usually we do this back into the Sum app tool so that your end users only have to interact with one platform. They're not going from place to place. They're inputting their data in some app, and then they're also seeing the map in another tab in some app. So I'm gonna, before I go hand it off to Ben, I'm gonna just, so Kara, will you just be sure, so I'm just looking at the chat, you'll be sure to put the power, thank you, so yes, Kemi, the slides will be available. Yeah, and the whole, yeah, Cindy knows the score. Okay. Now, before I hand it off to Ben, I want to say a couple things to help us, to help clarify what we're going to look at. So Ben is one of our sort of senior, advanced, and very creative and envelope pushing members of our community of practice. I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment so I can see your faces. It's important for I get a lot of information from watching people's faces, and I feel a little lost without that view. So and so Ben is one of our most creative users, which is always inspiring and always really gives us lots of ideas and is great. And there's some differences between this map that Ben's going to share and what we would traditionally call a social system map and what is usually being made when we're making a social system map. So I want to just call out those differences so that, because I know for those of you who've been with us for a while, you're here because you want to see this creative new stuff. And so that's a piece, a big important piece of the puzzle. And for the new people, I want to make sure that it doesn't get too confusing. So what you see here, there are some distinctions that you won't see in a normal ways, that it won't look like what we would call a normal social system map, or if you're in a context where somebody's creating a social system map. I don't want you to come away expecting to be that project to end up looking like Ben's project. So the two differences are, and I'm sorry, I have my chat thing open and I get really distracted by the chat thing, and I'm trying to make it only open when I want it to, but it keeps popping open, and then I'm like, and then it's making me it's a little scattered. So the two things is in a regular social, like the basic foundation of a normal everyday social system map is the nodes are people, and there are connections from person to person. And that is the foundation of what we're trying to do with social system mapping, is to enhance our understanding and our awareness of interrelationships among the humans in a system. So it's that the human to human relationship is philosophically the foundation of social system mapping and what we're trying to visualize. But we also have the capacity to add, we have this feature called dual elements, where we can add relationships between organizations and between humans. So we can say person to person relationships, person to organization relationships, and organization to organization relationships. It's already sounding really confusing, even to me. But Ben is doing a very creative thing where he's replacing relationships with concepts or initiatives or things, and I'll let him explain what he's doing, but he's using the organizational node in a very creative, very different way. And so the relationships are from people to these concepts that he's going to explain. And this map doesn't have people to people relationships. So that person to person relational dimension isn't represented, which is, I mean, contextually, it's appropriate. It's what Ben needed and what that group has. And so it's totally appropriate, and I'm not implying that it's not. And I just want to be really clear that normally what you would be seeing in a social system map is people-to-people relationships. That's sort of the normal thing in those lines. And okay. And so having said all that, now I'm going to hand over to Ben and let him share his wonderful, creative, inspiring variation on a social system app.
Thank you, Christine. Yeah, and I think some of what you'll see, the connection data that we collected on this map had to do with invitations that various participants in this global summit that took place from June 27th through July 25th in 2 phases. People in the second phase were invited to put invitations onto the map. When they registered, they were invited to put themselves on the map. So it served initially as a kind of directory. And out of the 580 people that registered for the summit, over 400 chose to put themselves on the map. And we collected that data through Eventbrite because that was what we used for registration, and then transported that in bulk, typically over into some app to have it displayed in Kumu. We chose not to ask people to do the relational stuff, partly because we had so many other things going on tech-wise that to add that extra layer, we were trying to cut back, and there was still a lot, but also because of where we wanted the focus to be. And often, it's one thing if you're mapping. So this was interesting to say, but this summit, it's an event, right? It lasted about 4 weeks. There is also the intention to repeat it and to experiment with more of an ongoing way for the people that were drawn to this to keep engaging with each other. And how that happens, we didn't know in advance. We still don't know. So we were testing a bunch of things out. But if it was, at some point you might say, oh, we actually do want to collect that person-to-person data, and some app does that really well. But I can show you, essentially how it works, except in this case, it's people to invitations. So I can show you the tech, and you can get a sense of that, as well as the power of the connection data, because that's really what's unique and special about the software that Christine and her partner Tim built, is that it lets you collect connection data across a whole network. There's other ways you can get profile data into a map like Kumu, but you can't say who else is on this map, or what are all the things that people might connect to that aren't people, and have them show that connection data. And that's the relational piece that's so powerful. And I think you'll see that here. So that just sets the context a little bit, and maybe I'll start sharing my screen. And let's just start with a web page that was part of the invitation process for the summit to get you grounded into that a little bit. Sorry, let me get this thing out of here. So this summit was sponsored by the Barrett-Kohler Foundation, which is affiliated with Barrett-Kohler Publishers. Some of you may know them as publishers of nonfiction works on systemic transformation. Meg Wheatley, Peter Block, many others. And they sponsored this summit, and my co-chair in it, Peggy Holman, is also co-chair of the Barrett-Kohler Foundation board. I think she had to drop off the call. Anyway, so we put out an invitation, and we invited people to register, as I said, through Eventbrite. And we told them, a bit about how it was going to work. And the first part of the summit was a more conventional kind of online conference type thing, where you had large groups of people all piling onto Zoom calls together. We scheduled them over 48 hours so people all around the world could play. And everything happened on those Zoom calls. So once you got on the Zoom call, there were some other tools and bells and whistles, but for the most part, we weren't asking them to interact with the map. The map was there, so if you encountered somebody on that call, the odds were you could find them on the map too, and see information about them. So let's actually go to the map now and look at just the people view. That's kind of the starting point, the default view on the map. And this is common in social system maps. I think you actually modeled this originally, Christine and Tim, that to not show the connections first, but to just show this kind of flat view where everybody's equal on the map, rather than, here are the most important people and they're all tangled up in the middle, and then there are these people floating on the outside with no connections, which could just be because they didn't map them. Anyway, you can pick any person on here. Interesting that I picked Matthew. We're going to show you something. He's going to come up again later. And this is a customizable survey about that person. So in this case, we wanted to know what led them to come to the summit, for example. Picture of him a little bit there. Not everybody uploaded a picture. So most of this data we gathered when they registered and just ported it over from Eventbrite. But people could then come in and add more data. They could change this, or maybe they didn't provide their location, for example, and then they do. And you can search that. And then we also created some sorting, because the process we used, open space technology, is all about the participants organizing the agenda rather than having experts in a preset set of panels and speakers and things. And we wanted people to have the capacity to organize in multiple languages, even though English was central to this. So you can use this map to see, who are all the people that speak a particular language. And here's everybody who checked off that they speak German, for example. And so that created the capacity for people to self-organize in languages other than English. We also had another filter around different interests that people had, because the theme of this summit, I haven't said the words, but as you can see, it's pretty broad. Co-creating a world that works for all encompasses all kinds of things. And this is, a partial list of what some of those things might be. And again, you can sort by this and see, who's interested in a particular sector. So here, I think we're seeing everyone who's into food and agriculture and speaks German, right? So now we can get even more specific in terms of supporting self-organizing. And that's a lot for people to take in, right? So you can see why. And one of the interesting experiences in all of this, in terms of lessons learned, is how do you onboard people into something with this level of complexity, and have them, without saying that everybody's got to engage at the sort of the master level. But the philosophy that we took was to say, let's have it, as low a bar to playing as possible, but also use things that might require a little bit of learning and effort, and not have that be required, but have it be available for those who want it. So the other views on the map, I created a special view for viewing this on a mobile app, because there are these pop-ups when you hover over something. It's nice when you're on a computer, but it's actually really annoying when you're on a phone. Kumu is working on a new user interface for next year, and I think it'll work better on a phone. It works on a phone, but there are just some subtleties. I even created a little video on sort of how to use it on your phone. There's a geographic map. You can just quickly look at that. So, and unfortunately, Kumu is discontinuing this. So I think we're going to have to get skilled at taking whatever location data we collect in some app and displaying that in some other tool, which won't be the worst thing, because this is not the best tool out there, but it's still pretty good. And you can see where people are, and similarly, you can click on them and you get your profile. And then this is where things got really interesting, was with this idea in the second phase of the summit, that people could post invitations and then respond to those invitations through the SumApp map interface, and have those responses generate not just a line on the map, but an actual email to the person or team that posted the invitation. So in addition to all the qualities of what social system mapping is that Christine mentioned before, that it's a network map and an asset map and this and that, with this new functionality, which is available, we developed it just for the summit, but it is available to anyone doing social system mapping using SumApp and Kumu. It's now becoming a communications tool, a way to signal something to people in real time that relates to maybe how you want to collaborate or self-organize. In this case, it was around who wanted to respond to a particular invitation. So here's an example.
Ben, can I pause you for just a moment? I just want to it's available, but would you just say how it's available? Because it's not available in SumApp natively, that communications tool, the emails that you're sending out.
Yeah. Do you want me to show you how you set it up now, or just, I can.
It can be later. I don't want to leave people with the impression that they're missing out on a new function in SumApp that suddenly is there. Like, no, it's not in SumApp, it's elsewhere. And you can, if you have time later, you can spell that out, but I just want to clarify that.
I can show you briefly, but yes, so it's a feature that takes advantage of the data coming out of SumApp through a JSON file. That's the technical, that's the technology through which SumApp sends its data to Kumu, and other software can pick up that same data and do stuff with it. And so in this case, it's the software called Kiko Chat, QIQO Chat, that we use as sort of the home base for the summit. It's like an event coordination space. where you can plug in all kinds of things. We plugged the Summit map in, we plugged our calendar in, but in the back end of Kiko Chat, so you don't even have to take advantage of this functionality. You don't have to be using Kiko Chat with the people on your map, but you just have to set something up in Kiko Chat, go in there and link it to the SumApp JSON file and the Kuma map you're using. And then you just need to do one other thing, which is in the profiles. So here's an invitation, right? We'll slow down. We'll come back to it, what you have to do in SumApp. But it really is quite simple. And if somebody wanted to try this out in a map, I'd be happy to support you and show you how to do it. If you know how to do social system mapping, you won't find this, I don't think, hard to add on. So here's an example of an invitation. This summit was mostly virtual, but we had in-person meetings. I organized a bunch of them in Washington, D.C. on July 19th and 20th. So I put the invitation up on the map with a bunch of stuff there for people to see. And then people responded to the invitation through the map. They could also just contact me, right? I put that here, my contact info. But we made it, if they've responded through the map, it becomes visible, right? And we can code things too. So this is a feature of some app that this could be true if it's a person, whatever you're connecting to. See how this line is blue? That's because I'm hosting it. And so it's because when I connected myself to the map, I checked off that I'm the host for this invitation. And so that became coded in blue. So this right here, this data in the connections, this is the magic of some app, is to let Usha, without ever talking to me, find this on the map and connect herself here and send me information about it, or Michael, right? And again, we're not relying on it, but this is, and to make that visible to others, right? So we can start, anybody can see who else is responding to this invitation, or if this was another person who's connected to that person, and get some information about why. So here we're seeing all the invitations that got posted, and you can see not everybody responded, but I chose to have them be visible on the map anyway, kind of floating around out there. The more connected something is, the more it shows up in the middle. You can adjust the size and the visibility. So I made the invitations a lot bigger to just have them stand out. And again, you can pick any one of them and focus and just see who responded here. And we did also, through Kiko Chat, create a tool to grab the email addresses of everybody here if they filled it out in a particular field, in this email public field that we created. So, and it's amazing how many people chose to do that, by the way. Of the 400 or so, I would say, probably 80% of them provided that. So you can see who responded to invitation. If you're Ryan, who put this invitation out, you could grab all those emails. You can also just manually get them. But imagine if there were 40 people who responded to this, right? It would be some work. And here's the one other thing I wanted to show you is that when somebody makes a connection, right? Here's Akiko. She responds to Ryan's invitation. She puts this information in here. Ryan gets an email that actually links him to a view that just shows Akiko and her data. Here's an example of one from something I put up. So I posted this invitation for a conversation on outgrowing modernity / coloniality. Matthew Martin, whose profile we saw before, responded to that invite, and I got an email with this link in it right up here. So I could click on that link. It says, hey, you've got new connections to your invitation on outgrowing modernity coloniality. Click here to see the details. I click there and it opens this page up. So I can see who it is. I can see his interests. He could have written some more about this too. He just sort of checked some things off. And I can also click on him, right, and see all of his profile data. So he doesn't have to put his contact info in the link data. He can just say, I want to be contacted by email, and presumably he's put his email here, and sure enough, he did, right? So this is how it's starting to now become a communications tool that in the past, I would have had to go to the map, find this node, notice that there was a new connection, and click on it, right? And this communication, the email will happen if Matthew updates his data here too. I'll get a notification that something was added and a link directly to that.
And can I pause you here for just a moment?
Mm-hmm.
April has a question in the chat about if that puts people's emails on the internet. And so I think that maybe this is a good place to just discuss the difference between a private map and a public map, and
Yep.
Also the optional email versus the functional email.
So you can have a map that is private and password protected in Kumu or accessible just through the map tab. This is now some app we're looking at here that collects the data. So when we sent people in here, when we told them, do you want to be on the map? It's a public map. We said it in all caps in 12 different ways. And that still didn't mean your email would be there, right? There is an email you use to link to your some app profile, but it isn't shared in your profile. It just, it's part of getting yourself set up on some app. And everybody who's on some app has a unique link that gets them into their, what I like to call a mapping dashboard. What are you calling it these days, Christine, this thing?
Me?
Yeah.
Where am I call? What am I? I'm sorry.
This page, I call this your some app mapping dashboard, this whole thing.
Oh, yeah, I don't have a good, I call it the interface, the platform, some app, the bio, I call it. It just doesn't land. It
Anyway.
hasn't landed. I don't.
Right. So you come here and this is some customizable text to tell you about this. It says, this is my mapping dashboard. This is where I can put a picture in. It says it's public. The way those emails get in is in the profile data. And again, we did a lot of this in Eventbrite, but people came on later too. So in the profile, there's a field. Here's where we collected the language information, contact info. So it's email public, right? And it said this will be publicly visible. So you don't have to put this in, right? But a lot of people chose to. And when they did, that showed up then in the map sidebar that I was highlighting before. And then here's the thing where you make those connections to the invitations. And so this is very similar to what you would see for people. And we just turned that off, but there could have been another tab up here for connecting to people. And everybody who was on the map would have had one of these little tiles, right? And you go to one of them and you click on it and up pops a little survey that is about that connection. So that data that is in the arrow, right, that we were looking at, for example, here that Matthew Martin sent to me, all this, my interests, my why I'm in ways I want to engage, all that. That's what you fill out when this pops open, right? So here's my interest in the invitation. Said, that blue line is because I checked that off. Here's if you want to say a little more about it, or if you have some questions, you could offer resources. So this is again how this is potentially becoming more of a communications tool, right? That invitation could be responded to right through some app in the map. I'm looking for resources on X, Y, and Z. Boom, here they are, right in that arrow, right? And we could code the map. We did actually to show if there was a resource there, it might be a different color, those kinds of things to help it make it easier to look at the map and see where this data is. So again, you put all that in, and that's how that shows up in the arrow. And I just want to show you one other thing that goes back to the question of how you turn on this email notification bit. So one of the nice things in some app, and probably one of the things I would do slightly differently next time around, you can have with one link into some app, you can access both yourself as a person and another thing. Originally, this was designed to be an organization that you put on the map. In this case, it's an invitation. So here's another invitation I put on to help design and convene the next summit. Okay, and similar to a person, you can put an image up and a little bit of text, and then there's a survey with invitation details. And this is where when we looked before at the invitations, there was a lot of information about that. So there's a description of the invitation. We're asking about languages. Here's how to contact the hosts. We're sharing what happened. So we wanted people who put invitations on to come back to the map and put a little text about what happened, maybe some links to notes or recording. So I can show you a view in a minute where you can see which ones have that. And then this is the communications magic. So if in a some app map, and this could be you as a person or another element, you have a field called email for notifications. I don't even know if you need this email notification preference, but we designed these two options that anytime somebody posts a new connection, you could get it, an hourly digest of those, or you could get a daily digest. And I think it defaults to daily. But if that's in there, and you also go into Kiko chat with a particular link and say, here's the map that this is connected to, then those notifications happen. That's all you have to do. So that may be a little unclear or confusing, but the point is it's pretty simple. And I think that may be all I need to show people. We can take questions. I can stop sharing.
So let's, how about if I want to structure our question asking, is there anyone who's brand new to the context? So, or brand new to social system mapping who is just like, there was a lot there. I mean, these maps are complex and there's always a lot there. And in this instance, there's even more there. And I'm just wondering, we're not going to be able to explain all the moving parts in detail at a brand new level. But if there's anything for a beginner that you're just totally stuck on and you're just like, I can't even listen anymore if I don't get this little thing clear for me. If there's anything like that, I'd love us.
Any question, right? I mean, that this is onboarding, right? So we're here first and foremost for people that are new to say, this stuff is so cool. And it can go way out on a limb like I just showed you, but it can also just show you the basic stuff of who's in your network or your community and how are they connected. Or maybe how do they want to be connected? Now that this notifications thing is there, I think we might see more and more people saying, I want to meet you, right? And then somebody gets an email about that, or I have some information I want to share with you, or I want to have a conversation, and the map can be a way to communicate that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
and make it visible. I think there's something special about those patterns being visible because you can always do it on the side. We're already doing that, right?
Yeah.
But to start, yeah.
Yeah. So is there anyone who has that kind of a question, and especially a new person who's just stuck on a piece of this process that is making it hard for you to even absorb more? I want to make sure we're all as not stuck as we can get ourselves easily in this context. So especially new people. Hi, April.
Hey, I'm not sure if I'm like stuck on it, but as I'm trying to translate it into my project, I keep thinking, as Ben, like, so I'm interested in sort of building a map that can accumulate and be more of a repository than just event-based. So yeah, just like any thoughts or notes on like, I mean, I as I'm listening, I'm like, yeah, I think that could easily just be used. It would just be less event-based, right? And it's probably more in the way you present it. But if there's any major differences.
Yeah, well, and again, this map was intended to do both, right? To be valuable during the event, but to remain as a resource beyond the event, which it is, and also to be there if we do future events or to support some kind of ongoing self-organizing, in between events, etc. So the map data can stay there as long as you want, and the things you choose to map can be, relevant to stuff other than who's registered for an event, right? Who's in my network, for example. We got Denise on the call, for example, who manages communications, director for a large network in Canada. And so those organizations are on the map. And actually, I don't know, I haven't seen her map to see if there are people on it too, but
Yes.
does that answer the,
Yeah.
I'm not sure there's anything we did that would fundamentally be different necessarily in other contexts, except, you might, instead of mapping an invitation, it might be an organization, or it might be an inquiry. It might be a conversation that you want to have. I mean, so I think one of the interesting tensions here, right, is between how much this is a tool for the ongoing evolution of something versus taking a picture of something. And we always thought, well, it should be some kind of ongoing evolution. But the whole, even the metaphor of a map organizes you to think it's a picture of a thing, right? And if the thing grows, then the map changes. But what if the thing grows because of the map? What if that's iterative and entangled, right? That's I think where this wants to go.
I would say the one difference that would be in an ongoing network building, sort of trying to create a long-term network, is individual connections would be there from the beginning. That's the thing I would say would be different.
Although, to be honest, I've done other maps where I haven't done that, or I've used the connections between people differently, because in a lot of the spaces I work in anyway, so many people know so many other people that to put your 100 connections to everybody else on the map is some work, but B, it wasn't always clear how valuable that was, because if you're on the map, I know how to find you, because you told me, which isn't to say it isn't important and valuable for all kinds of things. I'm just saying, like in another map, I used it to see who invited whom.
let's,
Just kind of
let's,
interesting. How did you
let's,
get here, you know?
yeah. Ben, I'm going to invite you and me not to get into philosophical debates about what's right, and just, you have your context, which is often a special context and slightly different from the normal. I will fill in a little bit. I will, if the question has to do with a normal context, I would like to answer it, or at least piggyback on what you say. And then I think we should move to the next question, because we can go deep into this or that, but I would like us to get, just keep orienting new people to what's here and what's possible, without too much unraveling of the differences in context.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Are there any other, and I see, Cindy, that it can take a long time to fill out connections. So that is attention that everybody has.
But if
And
you're doing it once with a new network, it's really valuable data. Wasn't arguing against it, just saying. Sorry.
yeah, no, I get the tension, and this is not the
I'm
venue.
supporting your position here. I'm trying
No,
to.
I know you are. I know you are. I'm just acknowledging there's a tension, and recognizing it, and wanting to move on. And so, Irina, did I say your name okay? Or is it?
Yeah, Irina. Yeah. Hi, thanks.
Yeah.
Just going back to, I don't know if it's necessarily a question. Maybe it's just looking for some validation on where I think my starting point is. So